So welcome back. Our next speaker is Stephane Ostertag, who is a well-regarded and a very experienced driver training gentleman, amongst other things, which he'll explain about. And part of how we've been trying to expand the program is to, as I said in my early thing, my introductory remarks, the non-sexy items. And driver training gets a Guernsey, as we would say in Australia. It gets some time and gets some budget. And it's an ongoing challenge because no matter how well produced the vehicle is, if the drivers aren't trained to understand how to manage, drive, and successfully return their principals back to base, then the success of the program will not be met. So I'll leave with you, Stephane. Yep. We look forward to your presentation.
Thank you very much, Joe.
Thank you indeed.
Thank you. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I think everyone had a lunch just before, so I'll try to take your attention as much as possible with this presentation. So my name is Stephane Ostertag, as Rob just said, and I'm an international driver training, so I do most of my activities abroad, not in France, from where I came. So I will be presenting to you driver training for civilian armored vehicles, which is most of the things I do overseas, civilian armored vehicles. I do also light vehicles, obviously, for our organization. And yeah, so thank you, Rob, for the invitation and the opportunity to be here today. So driver training for civilian armored vehicles, it's not only about the additional weight, but it's actually understanding why the vehicle is so heavy and how to control it. So there's a few things that needs to be understood is the importance of driver training delivery, key elements covered during driver training, what we really cover during those sessions, and the challenges in conducting driver training in some countries. So I'll try to explain you later on. So why is it important to deliver driver training? We're gonna just start afterwards with that. First, we have to understand traffic laws sometimes in some countries. So most of the time, those vehicles, as they are EV, they are registered as an EV vehicles, but it's not. Most of the time, it's not the case. The registration documents are not up to date, or they are not accurate, so they don't really precise the actual weight of the vehicles. So we think sometimes that the drivers need to have the EV vehicles license, but it's not the case. So most of the time, from what I saw during driver training, and we check the license, the driver permit from the drivers, and we check the documentation from the vehicles. The vehicle is not registered as an EV vehicles. So why? I would say why, because not only the drivers needs to use these vehicles, but also the staff from the embassy. So staff from the embassy are most of the time expats. They don't have EV vehicles license. There's no need for that. If there is any high risk or any, let's say, conflict in the country, the local drivers will stay home. Most of the time they will stay home, so they will not reach the embassy. So if the vehicles needs to be used, there is someone at the embassy that needs actually to drive those vehicles. So this probably is the meaning behind that the driver can drive this car, whatever driver license or type of driver license he's holding. Okay, so just for information. What's a civilian armored vehicles? And for some obvious reason and purposes, this vehicle needs to sometimes to be discrete and to blend in, depending on the environment where the vehicle is used. Definition of a civilian armored vehicles, it's a standard civilian vehicles that has been modified from its original purpose to fit into a security and protective objective for both drivers and passengers against a medium to high level ballistic and explosive threats. So that's let's say, a basic definition of a civilian armored vehicles. So let's just have a look at this picture here. On the bottom, you see this vehicle is up armored, but it's really discreet, and it blends in probably because most of the time because of the color. So you can use white color or black color, whatever, or gray color, but it needs to blend in for some occasion. And some clients, they want to have discrete vehicles, right? Some other vehicles, they are more equipped, but that's really depending on the requirement. What do we need to consider about civilian armored vehicles? So we need to consider additional weight, so that's pretty obvious. Additional safety and security equipment included into these vehicles that have been built in. Reduction in interior space, that's pretty obvious because steel plates, ballistic glass, all those cables, etc., are reducing the volume of the interior. So passengers sometimes, depending on their body, they can feel uncomfortable. Speed limitation. There is speed limitation when it comes to civilian armored vehicles. You cannot drive these vehicles high speed. It's not possible, not at all. So we really disagree with that. The maximum speed we allow is 100 kilometers on high road. So that's really maximum. We don't know what's happening after, depending on the upgrades, etc. There is really no need. If you take speed up over that, if there is a blowout, for instance, you don't know if you have the capabilities first and the reaction to really maintain the vehicles on the road. So that's very dangerous. Visibility issues because of the glass thickness. Sometimes drivers, they tell me they have headaches at the end of the day and they don't know why. From my point of view, it's really obvious because the thickness of the glass is like reading glasses, but you don't need them. So your brain is, after a few hours of driving, etc., is starting to push very hard, and your brain at the end of the day is just saying, "I'm tired." So it's a condition of driving those vehicles. You have to be used to. If it's not possible, and you have health issue because the brain is always keeping with headaches, etc. So you obviously you have to change position if the thickness of the glass is too much. Windows are locked for obvious reasons also. So sometimes drivers can be surprised why they cannot go down. Some manufacturing company do leave a few centimeters down. It really depends, but most of the time windows are locked. So you have to use other means to communicate with people outside, which sometimes is not there, like communication system. Sometimes there is armored vehicles, they are not equipped with communication systems, so the drivers needs to, unfortunately, open his door when there's a checkpoint or whatever. So that's a breach in the security system. Dynamics mobility modification or upgrade most of the time. Is there any upgrades on suspension, brakes, tires, wheels, etc. So that's a good question. Drivers, they don't have any information at all about that. They don't know why. They don't know for which reason, etc. They just feel that the car is moving as anyone else or any other vehicles, but it's not. So in some cases, you need to have really upgraded parts, and then you need to have the supply behind that. If there is no supply in country, you cannot maintain your vehicles in good order. So that's the problem. And most of the countries in Africa where I have been, they don't have access to supply at all. So they just go to Toyota or to the local garage and they get original brake system or original disc, which is very dangerous, as we can understand. Maintenance and warranty, like I just said, maintenance and warranty is a big issue from my point of view. End users are most of the time not informed how to maintain. What about the warranty? They think that Toyota is guaranteeing their vehicles, but Toyota is not. Toyota just put the end user back and say, you go to the manufacturing company, and then the manufacturing company, sometimes they are not picking up the phone, or there is no after-sales services. So that's the end user just alone in the country, which poses a lot of issue. Some vehicles are just on the garage and they are not maintained. They cannot be on the road, so that's an issue for the mission. And vehicle weaknesses, because civilian armored vehicles have weaknesses. We think that it's a fortress, but it's not a fortress. Even though one company is calling the vehicle fortress, it's not a fortress. So we think that those vehicles are really protecting you, whatever cost and ballistic threats, but it's not. So they have to understand that at some point they can die within those vehicles if they don't do things correctly and they don't react. So the importance of driver training for civil armored vehicles is, for me, vehicle familiarization, the ins and outs, understand every component of the vehicles, what has been changed, identifying the needs of the drivers and the needs of the mission, why this vehicle has been ordered and why the vehicle is actually used by the mission, understanding why a civilian armored vehicle is being used. Most of the time, well, embassies are using armored vehicles in most of the countries, but sometimes they don't. So it really depends the threat level in the country. Assessing the driver's knowledge and skills, so that's important because they are behind the wheel. They are the one using the steering wheel and by extent protecting the passengers. Evaluating the driver's competence and expertise for operating a civilian armored vehicles effectively. So what do we do in this case to comply with this? We try to assess the driver's attitude and driving behaviors, okay? Because there's a human behind the wheel, so everyone is different. So once we understand that, we really have to assess them, how they drive, their behavior on the streets, their behavior in traffic jam, their behavior on highways, etc., intersection, junction, awareness on road safety, defensive driving, and eco-driving. Eco-driving, why? Because they need to have a smooth driving behavior. A smooth means being able to have your passenger comfortably seated in the back, and they don't have any kind of disturbance when the driver is accelerating, pushing his feet on the gas pedal, and then pressing the brakes, which can be very uncomfortable. All of that because the braking system is very important because there's an additional weight on the vehicle. So we understand that reinforcement of driver skills and knowledge. So in general, the drivers that are working for embassies, they are very professional drivers, otherwise they wouldn't be picked up at the first time. But we just need to reinforce their skills, their knowledge about the vehicles, how the vehicles is reacting, the behavior of the vehicles because of the additional weight. So once they understand all the equipment, all the weight, why the vehicle is so heavy, why the vehicle is reacting so differently when I press the brake, when I accelerate, when I do curves, when I descend, etc. They feel more comfortable. So vehicle and introduction to the fleet of armored vehicles. Sorry, we cover ballistic and explosive protection. So we really go through the vehicles, down, up, in the front, in the back. Everything is really studied. Armors, ins and outs, safety equipment, and various specification of the vehicles. Then we do also vehicle control exercise like serpentine, code dodging, cornering, reverse maneuver, parallel parking, which is very basic, avoidance and evasive maneuvers in some cases, emergency braking. Also, they need to understand the limitation of the vehicles and some braking distance. Just to build the driver's confidence. We don't train them to be racing drivers. That's not the case, but we train them to be more confident with their vehicles. Why? Because we need to have confident drivers, we need to have safe drivers, and we need to have responsible drivers. What I see sometimes with embassy drivers, for instance, the one that is driving the ambassador, if he really thinks he can drive fast, so he's really pushing the car, and he's driving very fast in the city, and that's very dangerous. So we really need to make him understand that his primary role is to protect the passengers in the back. So behavior has to be corrected, attitude, etc. And they need to understand that their role is very, very important. So if you have someone in the back that feels uncomfortable and unsafe, they can lose the job directly right away. We do also training and practice in convoy driving and security protocols, because as an embassy drivers, for instance, they are a lot of the time they are on the road in escort or in convoy settings with other embassies, etc., etc. So they need to understand how driving correctly in high traffic jam, etc. Training vehicles also on vehicle search to detect vehicle-borne EIDs and other threats. Instruction on driving dynamics and mobility limitations, such as speed, braking, acceleration, navigating banes, curves, and inclines. That's very important for them to understand, and also sometimes making them understand that they can actually use the manual gearbox of their automatic gearbox, which can sometimes have a positive impact when they go down. Considering the impact of additional weight on the vehicle, center of gravity, heights, force applied, weight transfer onto the tires and the contact patch on the ground, and also whether or not the brakes and suspension have been modified. So that's all things they need to understand. And sometimes, if they have the chance, the vehicle has been tested against PIS 301 standards. I haven't seen one for now, but if it has been done, it's very, very good for them. They have this, then, I mean, it would probably bring them more confidence as well that this vehicle has been tested against this standard. What is very important also to understand, this is what I recognized back in Germany when I started. In some cases, the driver training is a requirement from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So they cannot touch armored vehicles, the vehicles from the embassy, before they attend the driver training and they get a certificate. So it's a requirement from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs most of the time. The essential of driver training, fundamentals and essential knowledge. We try to address road safety and driving behavior. Why? As I said before, there's a human behind the wheel. So we need really to understand the driver behind the wheel, which we really need to have confidence with him. We need to understand him. We need to know what is going on in his surrounding. We need to talk with him. We need to have some kind of feelings with those drivers. We need to understand them as a trainer. That's what I think. Mobility challenges and solution. Understand the armor and protection and security equipment. Security and protective driving. Yes, there is an aspect in most of the days on security and protective driving, because they are protecting people. And vehicle maintenance and life cycle management. I think it's interesting for them to also understand their position within the life cycle of the car. So if we look at the picture on the left side over there, we see that the drivers is on the top, and the drivers is part of a triangle. The triangle is his vehicle is the tool that he's using every day, but with this tool he's driving in an environment. So there's many things happening within this environment. So he has to have hazard perception and situational awareness. We need to have drivers behind the wheel that they are aware of the situation. They look around. They don't just look in the front, but they look in the mirror. They pay attention to blind spots. When they are in traffic jam, they have to pay attention what is going on around their vehicles. From my understanding, what I learned when I was starting is convoy stopped, convoy in danger. This is always what I was told, is the vehicle needs to keep moving every time, as much as possible. But we know it's not possible in some cities, depending on the hours, etc., on the times. You cannot just drive constantly, so you have to be careful. So they have to also to maintain some safe distance with the vehicles in the front. So that's also part of the training. Why? Just because when the vehicles is stopped in the front, they just have to go around and keep going. If they are too close from the vehicles in the front, they are just stuck. Safety and security measures is also part of the job. for obvious reasons. So there's a pressing need to address road safety. We know that everyone is talking about that, and driving behavior, because there's a human behind the wheel. So as I said, we need to understand every different character, because they are all different. Sharing the road and navigating alongside other road users, often in convoy setting through crowded junction and under stress of reaching destination on time. Some drivers may assume they have special rights due to diplomatic plates, but they don't have special rights. They are still civilian and local people, by the way. So, which needs to be corrected every time. We need to correct those attitudes, because it cannot stay like that. So, there's also mobility and security issues in traffic jam, managing the challenges of transporting diplomats or VIP in EV traffic, or sometimes choke points like bridge, roadworks, narrow roads, and highway exits. So that those are few situations where drivers can be trapped, can come into an ambush or anything like that. So those are really situations they need to focus and they need to pay attention. Protective driving, emphasizing protective but never aggressive. So we do convoy protocols, we do convoy training, we show them how very to maneuver and protect the passenger and protect the VIP cars in some extent, but never aggressively, because there is no need to be aggressive, because you're still driving in the traffic. You don't have any escort. If you have an escort from the local authorities, okay, no problem, they are in charge. They are opening the road, they are blocking the traffic lights, they are blocking the streets, etc., etc. So that's another dynamic. Obeying to traffic rules, yeah, they need obviously to obey to traffic rules. Driver must always respect traffic laws, speed limits, and road signs. So that's the basics. We never go beyond that. So that's a golden rule. Vehicle induction, understanding the reinforced and heavy duty components of the vehicles and their importance on the driving behavior if they are equipped. So you can have regular civilian armored vehicles with OEM spare parts, and then on the other side you can have another civilian vehicles with upgraded spare parts. Those vehicles, they will have different behavior on the street. We understand that, I think. So if they have several fleets of vehicles inside their mission, they need to understand also the difference between those vehicles within their fleet. So they need to be trained on each of those vehicles to understand the different behavior. So that's pretty obvious. Vehicle maintenance awareness, they play a critical role in collecting data every day when they are driving and maintaining those vehicles, and understanding their life cycle and upkeep. We cannot rely on fleet manager or the ambassador or security manager within the embassy to just keep going. They are the ones using the vehicles. So those are the people that are very much on the good position to just come back with some feedback, come back with some incident on anything that is concerning the vehicles. So they are the central player. They really need to understand that. Security and mobility consideration. Driver must recognize their vehicle's vulnerability, such as the cooling system. there is a weakness in the front from the cooling system. Ballistic glass also, and especially under fire. So we don't do training on the fire, just to be clear. But in some countries we have the capabilities to have hands-on training and use blank bullet, for instance, in some countries. Why we try to simulate this? Because we want to see the reaction of the drivers. We want to see how they react, even though it's a training. When they come and they are just attacked by some stranger on the street, and they hear the sound of firearm, they have a reaction, because we are all different. Everyone is different, so we have different reactions. So that's very interesting also for me to just try to understand their behavior. You will be surprised, but sometimes drivers, they stop and they open the door. I don't know why, but that's a reaction. This is also things we need then to address. The crucial role and importance of the appropriate tire pressure. Tire pressure is very important. Sometimes you have the stickers on the arch of the wheel. The stickers is the one that the armoring company has been putting, but then in the meantime you change tires. So every tire has a different has a different load index. So they have to look at the tire themselves. Those are all things we address during driver training because they are the one using the vehicles, no one else. Sorry. Ballistic glass delamination. Most of the countries I've been in Africa, Mali, Burkina Faso, etc. They have high temperature during some period of the year. So if they keep their vehicles in the front of the heat for the whole day, after a few months, they will discover that the glass has been there is delamination, and they don't understand why. You also can approach vehicles with a crack in the middle, so the front windshield is cracked. So that's an issue, but that's not an issue because of the glass. That's an issue because they did something wrong. So they have to understand also that their vehicles needs to be in the shade and as much as possible away from high heat during high temperature. Tires and wheel replacement. Everyone knows how to replace a tire and a wheel. That's not a problem. When it comes to civilian armored vehicles, because the weight of the wheel is very high and very heavy, we need to change a few things when they handle the wheels. That's just for them to be safe. But on the other side, the jack needs to be placed on a different location, and sometimes they don't know that. They don't know that, so they think that they can place the jack on the official and the basic point, but it's not the case. So they also need to understand those kind of situation where they will feel more safe. Emergency exit. So that's a very interesting point because most of the vehicles I've been using during driver training, they don't have any emergency exit in place. So that's an issue for me because if the vehicle has a road accident, for instance, and the vehicle is on the side, they will be all trapped. We know why, because the doors are too heavy, you cannot open them. So if you want to go in the back, and the back is not usable because the emergency exit is not there, so you just trapped. So you wait for the emergency services. But then you have the emergency services coming, and they don't know that this vehicle was armored, so they don't have the tools. So they have to come back and go back and forth with the adequate emergency equipment. So that's a few hours in the vehicles, and then everyone gets stressed, etc., etc. Then also the different safety equipment. We need to introduce themselves how to use, for instance, the microphone communication system. They see that the equipment is over there, the microphone is over there, but it's not in use. They don't know how to use it. Or for instance, the battery is down, so they think everything cannot be used. I need to open the door. No, you just need to replace the battery. That's it. And then you go your way. Suppression system, fire suppression system also. Not all the vehicles have been delivering driver training to has fire suppression system, but they also need to understand how this is put in place and why and where exactly, and why they have a button inside their vehicles with a fire suppression system picture. Intercom system, airbag deactivation. Yes, most of the time those vehicles, they have an airbag deactivation. I don't see very much the point behind this, to be honest. Most of the colleagues I've been doing driver training with, they said, you just deactivate the airbag once you wanna do a breach through vehicles. And I would say, no, I just leave my airbag and I could do a reverse then in this case. Why should I go there if I can do reverse? And once you understand this as a driver, you try to drive inside a city, and then you get trapped in the front and in the back. Would you really think before driving through to deactivate your airbag? I don't know if this is something that comes in the first place. So that's all consideration, and I'm not very comfortable with. Those vehicles, they have sirens, they have flashlights, they have public address system. Okay, I don't know the application, to be honest. I don't know why a civilian driver working for an embassy should address himself to the public. There is no right. He has no power. Blackout system. I've seen this once on Santigon vehicles. It's the same. They have just to understand when to use it, but I think they will never use it, to be honest. Blackout system it's just a thing like James Bond for me. So there's no application. But the crucial point is maintaining the adequate and appropriate tire pressure. So next one. I think I'm running after the clock. No? I'm fine? Yeah? So very, very quickly, the challenges of conducting a driver training is there's a lot of challenges, as we would understand. Well, of course, there needs to be a budget allocation to ensure that the adequate funding are there for the training delivery. We need to have an agreement with the end user for if there is a terms of references, etc. We need to make sure that we understand each other on the delivery. Finalizing training and logistic arrangements. So we need to have access, of course, to some location in country. We also need to have support from the end user or the clients in country. Convoy driving practices. Can we actually, in this country, have application of convoy driving? It really depends. Hands-on training and simulation, it's the same. Most of the country, you cannot do anything. So you just drive. You do whatever you want, but we cannot go beyond. We cannot have access to a secure location or a police training camp or gendarmerie school training camp, etc. So that's fine. I mean, if it's possible, we try to use it. The availability of the drivers and the vehicles, because we train the drivers on their vehicles, if that makes sense. I don't see any needs to train drivers on other vehicles. They need to be trained on their vehicles, their mission vehicles. So for me, that's really necessary. Country security context. So we have also to understand and adapt to the local security context, where when you do the driver training, sometimes in some countries you cannot do whatever you want. You just have to make sure and to be safe if you do a driver training. In some countries, at the moment, we cannot do driver training for obvious reason. And local authorities agreement, we need sometimes to obtain necessary permission from local authorities, like local traffic authorities or local police authorities, to deliver driver training. So that's really depend the country profile. So the additional consideration when delivering driver training, we need obviously a classroom setup. We need a parking area outside to just go around the vehicles, study. Driving area. We need also to make sure about security. The driving area must be private or secured with limited access to ensure safe execution of the maneuvers. Vehicle ratio, at least one vehicle per 2 students. I don't go beyond that. Rubber traffic cones for practical simulation, and obviously trainer for student ratio. I don't see the point to have 8 people around me with 3 vehicles. There's really no point of doing driver training like this. So I keep 3 or 4 students with me, and I think I can concentrate on those 3 or 4 students as much as I can. The important note is we conduct training sessions using the mission on vehicles, as I said before, with the country and operational context. Renting armored vehicles is not cost effective and may lead to discrepancies in vehicle specification. Okay, pre-training requirement, as I said before, we sometimes rely on in-countries partners to give us some support. With a minimum, we do a minimum one day before the training. We provide with the support in the country. We try to assess and to evaluate the different location where we're going to deliver the training. Okay. I think Rob is pushing me. I'm gonna just leave you with this little video, which has been, which was in Mauritania beginning of January. Okay, and this is one picture with a dummy, what do you call it, dummy?
A crash dummy.
Yeah, the one that are placed during doing tests in Germany for the VPAM certification.
The biofidelic dummy.
Yeah, exactly, the biofid, yeah. So we also try to discuss various protection level during training, because they need to understand what kind of protection level they have, what kind of certification has been done, if it's a certified vehicles, if it's a non-certified vehicles, etc. We talk a lot about this. Most of the embassies have been delivering driver training too. They have VR7 vehicles, so that's fine. But then again, they need to understand the other world, which is the non-certified vehicles, and specifically on certification standard. I'm done.
All right, excellent. Look, thank you so much, Stephane.
Thank you.
Come over this way too. I think we gave Stephane another 2 hours. He might cover all the issues at hand. And I think it just reflects that it's a complex, not complicated, but there's a number of moving parts to the issue of driver training and having the drivers adequately prepared, suitably prepared to be able to perform the task they had. And from the video at the end, sort of the manoeuvrability in order to escape and protect the principal. You can charge along at 100 miles an hour and turn around the corner, but if you're going to roll the vehicle over, you haven't really achieved anything. So thank you very much for going through it. There's a lot of information, and it's important all there along the way. And hopefully there's more impetus now from various agencies. I know everyone does driver training. Hopefully a few ideas might come out and it might help.